Hey, Joe, welcome to the show.
Good to be here. Good to be here. Thanks for having me, man.
Joe, I'm very excited for this. I've listened to your podcast for a long time. Excited to have you on here. Now, you're a partner over at Quiet Light. Tell us a little bit about your background and, we'll jump into why we're chatting right now and some of the big release that you have.
Yeah, cool. Self-employed since 1997, so I've been around the block a little bit, right? Got some gray on the chin. Always knew I was going to be an entrepreneur and just couldn't figure out the path that I was going to go on. And I worked at a company. I interviewed for a company back in 1994, where the interview was on a Saturday morning, and the person doing the interview was in sweatpants and a t-shirt, and it was a woman. And I thought, oh, this place is great. It was the second time I had an interview where it was just a perfect vibe because it was so casual, so laid back. Now, of course, that day was moving day. She didn't wear sweats to work every day. But I had another one a while back where in the interview, the guy asked me if I like beer. And so there's a pattern of casual, that kind of thing where it just sort of fit. But I worked for that company back in 1994 for 3.5 years, and we went from 34 employees to just over 1,000. And it was awesome, spectacular, amazing early on. And then it got to the point where I felt like a worker ant. So I had to jump out and go out on my own. So I started a media buying agency specializing in the direct response radio space in 1997, launched my own product in 1998, went 100% online, and did multiple products since then, and lots of clients in the media side. But I launched my 100% online business in 2005. It was a product that I launched in 2001, did radio, did a television infomercial, went 100% online in 2005, and then built that up, took it through the best of and the worst of the economy, and then sold it in the fall of 2010 through a little company called Quiet Light Brokerage.
Yeah, and that's how it kind of started off. I love that part of your story where you talk about how you found some great companies to work with. You started really small at 34, and then when it got to about 1,000 employees, there was a period of that wasn't very fun. And that's actually like very reminiscent of my own story, where you can find some great companies, and some people work really well in large organizations, and some people work well in small ones. And just in terms of how much fun you want to have and how much politics you want to play. So,
Yeah,
um,
and I'm not good at the politics. So I gave my notice, and I had risen up through the ranks. That person who interviewed me on that Saturday, she ended up rising up through the ranks as well and became the director of sales and marketing or something like that. It was a big call center. And we were great friends for a long time. And then she was promoted to her level of incompetence. And I had said that to a few people and decided I was going to leave the media side of the business. I was going to start my own company and go back to the sales floor. She was in charge of the sales floor. So when I gave my notice to go work over there, it was accepted. But then I said I was going to take a week off. During my week off, the head of HR called me and said, yeah, this isn't going to work. Come on in, pack your bags, get the hell out. So it was, I technically resigned, but they did walk me to the door at the end of the day.
hopefully you didn't miss out on a severance package or anything like that by resigning. So,
Oh, hell no. There's none of that in those companies.
so Joe, 2010, you sell your business through Quiet Light. Let's kind of take it from there. So most
Yeah.
listeners know what Quiet Light is. They know who they are. Tell us a bit about Quiet Light and how you joined there.
Yeah, so I sold in November 2010. I had my first call with Mark in the spring of 2010. I talked to a couple of other brokerage firms that were around at the time as well, and they were just trying to reach into into me to get their commission. It felt like, get their hooks into me. Whereas Mark actually was, inquisitive and helpful, and told me, "Look, Joe, if you wait another 6 months, you're going to make a lot more money based upon the recent trends." And so I waited. Jason was my advisor at the end of the day when I called back, and we had it listed and sold inside of 45 days under LOI very quickly. I liked the process so much that after about a year off and messing around with different things, I joined the team in spring of 2012. It was just Jason, Mark, myself, and Amanda back then. And I think in the first full calendar year, imagine this, Ryan, if you can, I sold 23 transactions, which is a lot. It's a lot of transactions. The difference back then is the transaction size was much smaller. It might have been $125,000 to $150,000 on average. Today, fast forward 10 years, I've closed about 100 million in total transactions, which seems like a lot in many cases. Altogether touched about a $500 million in total half a 500 million. Yeah, I guess that's a $500 million in total transactions. Sounded like a lot when I said it, but I guess it is right.
That is a lot.
But the reality is that Quiet Light has, gotten to the point where it is where, I think that someone on the team in the next 36 months will sell 100 million in transactions in a single year. The transactions are just getting much bigger because obviously the brand and reputation is bigger, but the people in the audience like this one are getting smarter. They're starting to understand that they're building a sellable asset and will probably make more money on the exit than they do actually running the business.
No, I love that. And with your background, right? 100 million maybe doesn't sound like that much to you, but if you think about the amount of transactions, 500 million in transactions that you've seen and touched, there's a lot of lessons learned in that. There's a lot of deals you've seen, probably thousands and thousands of businesses. I would imagine, even just in the last 3 or 4 years, when I started to really dive into the acquisition space, what I thought was a good business 4 years ago was a terrible business, right? And so You've seen so many good ones, so many bad ones. This kind of leads us into why we're chatting. So you've got this life work, all your experience, you've got the Entrepreneur Playbook book coming out. So tell us a little about your book, and we'll dive into some questions about it.
Yeah. It's it's funny. You just called it the Entrepreneur Playbook, which I probably should have named this something else because someone yesterday I was talking to was trying to type it in to the URL and he couldn't get. I'm like, here, let me just give you the link. It's the EXITpreneur's Playbook, and it's a funny thing. I had surveyed probably 10 influencers in the industry, Ezra Firestone, Andrew Youderian, Mike Jackness, Syed Balki, all sorts of folks. And I said, hey, here's a bunch of names of the book. And EXITpreneur was one of them. One of the others was Incredible Exits. 80% of the people chose Incredible Exits, and I went with EXITpreneur, and it morphed into the EXITpreneur's Playbook. Somebody said to me the other day, he said, Joe, listen, I've read a ton of business books, and most of them did not need to be written. This one absolutely needed to be written, and it needs to be read by online entrepreneurs. And I think that was an incredible compliment given, who that individual was. And it's why I did it. In the last 9 years, I've had probably 8,000 conversations, one-on-one conversations with entrepreneurs about their business. And there's so much information to be shared. It can't be done in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 conversations because they just get overwhelmed. It's like drinking through a fire hose. So the EXITpreneur's Playbook is literally, a training guide, if you will, or, it puts the seller of a business, right from the beginning all the way to the eventual exit and everything in between that they need to know, whether it's how to negotiate with an aggregator, what valuations look like, what the multiples look like, how to calculate discretionary earnings, what an add back schedule is. And there's lots of success stories and failures along the way that I shared in the book itself.
I want to dive into that. And also, I think I just mentioned the name of your book wrong. It's not the Entrepreneur Playbook. It's the EXITpreneur Playbook. So I want to be clear about that. As we dive into this, let's dive into a few of those topics, because I had an early copy, which, thank you. That was awesome. I was able to read this before. And you basically, the whole premise of the book is you're reverse engineering your end goal, right? And walk us through that path a little bit as you try to, as an entrepreneur, in trying to reverse engineer their exit. And as you know, some people say, oh, I don't ever want to sell my company. You will exit your company somehow, right? You can't run it forever. Whether that's going to be an exit, health reasons, you pass away, something's going to happen and you're going to need to exit your business. Now, ideally, you want to do that on your own terms. So can you walk us through kind of that reverse engineering path?
Yeah, for the longest time, people would call and we'd just give them the valuation, tell them ballpark what we think their business is worth. And I was on a call with somebody else on the team where he just flat out said, how much do you want to sell your business for? And that person answered the question. And then we reverse engineered how to get to that value. Oh my goodness, I've been doing this wrong the whole time. And the fact of the matter is, setting goals makes a difference. 80% of people that set goals, hit them, as opposed to those people that don't set any goals. You'll be more successful in life with actual goal setting. So the same is true in the eventual exit of your business. I think if you pick a number and say, okay, I want to sell my business for X dollars, you need to do that And then you need to figure out exactly where you are today so that you can reverse engineer a path to it. If you want to sell for $10 million, you need to know what your current discretionary earnings are and what your growth rate is. And that way you can see how quickly you'll get to that exit or how slowly, or what you need to fix in the business. So go into that a great deal in the book, what you need to fix and adjust to make it more attractive to buyers, because there's so much detail that goes into what buyers want. You've got to adjust it and fix it in order to achieve your goal.
Why do you think entrepreneurs don't take this kind of planning stage seriously? It seems like, people are so, for the most part, people want to sell their business and all of a sudden they want to sell it now rather than, actually planning this out. Why don't people plan it a little further out? Is it they're just so busy building their own business, or do they, not want to know what their business is worth? Because if they do know, then they have to like face the facts. Why is it?
I think there's a stigma associated with brokers, first of all. I think they're afraid to call them because they think they're salespeople and going to get talked into something that they don't want to do. And, we've just tried very hard to get rid of that stigma because we're helping, we're advising. And that's the point of the book, is to give someone almost everything that they need to really get a decent understanding of the value of their business. But, the fact of the matter is that people don't want to do exit planning, right? I don't want to call it that. It's not that. It just makes somebody's eyes bleed and they're like, whatever, I'll get to that someday. And the problem with that mentality is you're going to wake up and someday's here and then it's going to be too late and you're not going to be able to maximize the value of your exit. You're going to have to wait another year or two in order to truly get that maximum value. So I look at it as training, Ryan. If you're going to go out and run a 5K, if you're going to do a marathon, triathlon, whatever you're going to do, and you want to do it well, you got to train for it. Yes, you can wake up and you could probably run a 5K. You might finish it. You might have to walk a little bit. It's going to be very uncomfortable and painful. And then when you're done for a few days after, right, that recovery period, it's going to hurt. It's the same with your business. If you want to exit well and you want to get maximum value, you've got to train for that exit. And that's what the book is all about. It's giving you all the training tools to understand what you need to do, what brings value, what plummets value, how to calculate discretionary earnings. It's all in there. It's all been out there in the internet world and different pieces and places all over the place in individual conversations. The problem is that half that information is wrong. So now it's all in one place. It's all your toolkit. It's all your training manual, if you will, to get prepared for that exit on your own time, right? You could just flip through the book and get inspired and get motivated and excited, because once you set that goal and then you understand where you are today, those terrible days that we all have as entrepreneurs, those terrible weeks and months, they get a little easier because you've got, the end in sight. Even if you get to that goal and then you say, you know what? I got this thing in such great working order. I'm going to hold off. I'm going to push it. I'm going to push the goalpost down a little bit. I'm going to wait another 6 months or 12 months or 5 years. I don't want a $5 million exit anymore. I want a $10 million exit, because you're running the business more efficiently and you understand that the value, the biggest part of the value might be in the exit.
I've seen several people try to prepare their business. They're in over their heads. They don't have any systems in place. They want to sell their business. It's not really a transferable business. You can't sell that business. And what happens is over the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months, they put in all the right processes and systems in place to all of a sudden they're not working 60, 70 hours a week. They're working 10 and they don't want to sell the business anymore.
Right.
So part of that's actually like, you're making your life a lot better too.
I've seen that a lot. If you do the math too, think about transactions. Average transaction size might be 1.5 million. If you really just do the simple math. So the percentage of entrepreneurs that I've spoken to that eventually went on and sold their business is incredibly small. And it's because they weren't prepared. They didn't have the basics of a profit and loss statement. They didn't have accrual accounting. Their business was not transferable, or it was trending down and it wasn't going to meet their financial goals, or something that was wrong with the business or something wrong with them that they didn't prepare properly. They couldn't achieve their goal. They worked their butt off bootstrapping this thing and trying like crazy to turn their side hustle into a full-time gig, and then but didn't think about anything except top line revenue. And didn't get all the bits and pieces in there that needed to be in the right place in the right columns in order to make it attractive to buyers.
So can you tell us any like particular stories that you've seen of, maybe cautionary tales of um, people who wanted to sell and were just basically unprepared, and that became very apparent in that first conversation with you or something?
Yeah, yeah. It was more like the fifth conversation. I made a mistake a couple of years ago, and I got a call, and this guy said, "Look, I was about to sell with XYZ brokerage firm, but I just didn't feel right about it at the end of the day. You came highly recommended. This is what they gave me for a value. Can we work together?" Great. And I said, "Well, based upon everything you said, sounds right." He said, "Just send me an engagement. Let's sign an engagement. Let's get going." I hadn't even reviewed the P&Ls yet. I sent him an engagement letter. So I get the P&Ls, right? We're not going to list the business until we dive in. It's normally not the way we do it. Normally it's review the P&Ls, firm up the number, see how close you are to your goals, and then sign an engagement letter if we're ready to go. In this case, I'm analyzing his P&Ls, and we're doing it on a Zoom call. So I'm scrolling through. We're talking about some specifics, and we get to the month of July, and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! Hold on. What's that number right there in July? I didn't do $297,000 in revenue in July." I'm like, "Well, this is your P&L. You gave this to me. What's the situation here?" And we dive into it. And basically, it was all wrong. The P&L was completely wrong. And the sad story is there that he was shooting for an exit of $10 million. The reality is his business was worth about half that. Still a big number, but it didn't achieve his goals. So he had to go back to the drawing board, hire the right bookkeeping firm to get the numbers right and get motivated to move on or to run the business for another 5 years or until it doubled in size, which was really, really hard because he was emotionally toast. He was done. He was ready to move on and just be done. The sad part is I was the Grim Reaper and was like, "Listen, man, this is not going to happen. Your goal, you're too far away. Your numbers are not right. You're not trending in the right direction. And you've got to, based upon the projections here, it's going to take another few years for you to be able to exit at that value." And so he didn't train, right? His numbers were all wrong. He did a cash accounting instead of accrual. He hired a bookkeeper that was just out of college that did exactly what the CPA said to do. And it was just simply all wrong. He wasn't prepared. So he's still running the business today. He hasn't exited yet.
Yeah, I think that's really common. And it's tough to be the bearer of bad news, but also if it's not going to hit your goals and you've already hit I call it the energy life cycle that an entrepreneur has. And you have it with different businesses, and people ask, well, why would anybody sell their business if it's making money and going well? Well, everybody has this energy cycle with every project and business that they're on. And I've had great businesses that I was just bored of and I was tired of, and I was like, okay, it's time for me to move on. Because if once that energy life cycle starts kind of going on the down, you start not treating that business the way you should. You start missing invoices. You start missing when you're supposed to place supplier, orders, those types of things. And so it's a very dangerous path if you wait till the last minute of like, I've hit the end of my rope, I'm ready to be done. Because if it's not going to hit your goals or you can't exit that business, all of a sudden, can you really revive yourself and revive the energy you need to continue to grow that business?
Yeah, that's spot on. Most people that are running these businesses as entrepreneurs, we get bored and we want to move on. We get shiny object syndrome. We've got an affliction called "I can do that." We think we can do anything. The benefit of preparing, training, and getting ready for an exit, just assuming it's going to be there, even if you choose to never sell because you love it, is that when you do get ready to move on to that next adventure, that you will have everything in order and you can do it easily and seamlessly so that you're free and clear. You got a bunch of money in the bank. You don't have to bootstrap as tightly on your next adventure, and you'll have another one for the most part. Most people do, and until they get that fourth or fifth exit that's so large that they don't need to do anything else.
I would say in my own journey, I've had a couple exits, and I've also had some businesses that I should have exited sooner. And then I knew my life cycle of energy was going on the way down. And I've determined with my own self, once I have that thought of the grass is greener on the other side, I need to sell this business. If I start having those thoughts, it's time for me to do it, because if I don't, I let that business kind of go down.
Yeah.
You've talked a lot about, just on your own podcast and, it just in talking with you, Joe, an ignorance discount. When people try to go sell their business on their own, what is that, and how could people avoid that? Because it's a really common thing and people have no idea that they're missing out on it.
Well, one example, simple example of an ignorance discount. So if there's anybody in the audience that is running an FBA business, odds are they've heard from one of the aggregators, or people that are in the audience that are buyers. You can get your own ignorance discount by focusing in on this. You know, most entrepreneurs that have a cashback credit card just put that cashback over into their personal account. If they're getting rewards, it never shows up on the P&L. Neither shows up on the P&L. And when they run a profit and loss statement and do an add back schedule, it doesn't occur to them that that's an owner benefit, and that should be in the P&L. It's generally, 1 to 2% of advertising, whatever the number might be. That's an ignorance discount. If you don't do a proper add back schedule, and that's just one of, I think, 18 examples I give in the book. If you don't do a proper add back schedule, you will lose tens of thousands of dollars in value on your business. In a situation where I've seen about, $50,000 added back just with cash back alone. And in this particular situation, we had to convert the rewards to the cash value by month. But it added about $50,000 to the discretionary earnings. And then when you add a multiple to that, in that particular case, it was a 4-time multiple. It's a strong business that added $200,000 to the list price of the business. And when you start talking about those details and those numbers, entrepreneurs get much more motivated to get through those things that kind of make everyone's eyes bleed, right? Nobody gets super excited about that. It's not very sexy, but an extra 200 grand in that just one little add back line can get very exciting and very sexy. That's one example.
That was just one simple example that a lot of people do miss often. With your book, it basically it's kind of opening the mind of a seller and how do I run this business and how to build this business to sell. We have a lot of listeners who are in the space to buy, right? But in order to buy, you need a seller. In order to sell, you need a buyer, right? So all these things kind of go hand in hand. When it comes to your book, what I love about the format is it does help someone go through their own business and say, hey, this is how I can actually value my own business. But from a buyer standpoint, you can take that same playbook and apply it to any business you might be looking at too.
Yeah. I wrote the book for sellers, but the more I had to, when you're editing your own book, you got to review, look for typos, all that stuff. The more I reviewed it, the more I thought, this is an amazing book for buyers. They're going to truly understand what the sellers are putting together, or hopefully are putting together if they're, smart and have a good advisor or are doing a good job on their own. They're going to put all of these details together so that they are getting maximum value for their business. From a buyer's perspective, when they look at a business that's listed by the owner, right? They're not using a broker or a broker that doesn't have the experience. A buyer is going to be able to look at that P&L, look at the details of the business and say, okay, they didn't do that add back. They didn't do this. That person is, overpriced. I can outsource that to a VA. There's so much instant equity that they will be able to gain by doing the right thing in the business. Or if they bought it and then decided to sell it a year later and just make the right adjustments or do a proper add back schedule when they sell, there's a lot of instant equity that can be gained. And in today's environment, as you know, it's very competitive in terms of buying businesses. And certain, people get to the point of going, oh, well, I'm not going to pay more than a 3-time multiple or a 3.5-time multiple. When you understand what mistakes are made in presenting a P&L in an ABEX schedule, and that they've been made, and it's simple math to go, okay, they're listing it at a 3.5, but if they had done a proper ABEX schedule, the business as listed is really listed at a 3 or 2.5. So I think it will make buyers feel better about buying a business, even if they're paying what feels like a high multiple. They'll understand that they are gaining some instant equity in the business because of it. And it just goes through every aspect of it. There's a chapter on deal structures. It goes through, all of the different deal structures and how to negotiate them into an asset purchase agreement and a letter of intent. That alone would be very helpful for buyers, because we go down through each point, and I talk about it for sellers. If you get this is what you should look at. This is the type of earnout that you should have, what a stability payment is, how to negotiate a great deal on inventory, right? Instead of paying cash for inventory, try to get the simplest thing on inventory is a short seller note on inventory. Most sellers are fine with it. If they're getting cash for most of the business, they'll do a 3 or 6 month note on inventory. It just keeps cash in your pocket as a buyer. The business is going to pay for it. There's an entire chapter on deal structures and negotiating those things. So I think it's a great book for buyers as well as sellers, even though I did in fact write it for sellers.
Well, ultimately, in order to do a deal, you need both parties, right? You got to have a buyer, you got to have a seller. And if you don't have one, then a deal doesn't happen. With just a couple minutes left, Joe, I've heard you say this time and time again, that 50% of what a business owner might make or more is when they actually sell the business. I found that to be true in my own life, but can you kind of unpack that statement a little bit?
Yeah, without going into the numbers too much here, because it's just very detailed, I ran the analysis. It's not, I heard it at one point and then I thought, wait a minute, let me just do the math on that. And I did the math on a sample business, and it's absolutely true. For a young business that is, 2 to 3 years old, generally speaking, the money you make on the exit versus how much you put in your pocket is much, much higher than 50%. And it's because there's so much cash that's needed to keep growing the business, particularly a physical product business, because you have so much money tied up in inventory. You're just trying to feed the beast with keeping up with inventory. But it holds true for SaaS businesses because of the development costs up front, and content businesses because of all the writing that needs to be done up front. You're generally putting a lot more money into it up front and not able to pull out a whole lot of cash. So in that 2 to 4 year range, if you exit, you're going to make a lot more money on the exit than you are actually operating the business, because sellers' discretionary earnings does not equal cash flow, right? People get that misperception. Most people are running these businesses because they were bored. They wanted to, be out and on their own. And as you said, there's that energy life cycle of an entrepreneur. And I find my cycle has always been 7 years, right? But in this online world, there's so much changing so fast and so much pressure. I feel like that life cycle is even a little shorter, definitely sub 5, I think, on average for sure. And so, you're definitely going to make more money, I think, on the exit than running it, for a variety of reasons. Capital gains taxes versus personal income taxes is one. And I know there's a lot going on in the political environment now. It seems like they're not going to be raised to the level that Biden wanted to have them raised to, but you pay less in taxes on the exit as well. It's detailed in a chapter and goes through the math, and you can add zeros or subtract zeros all you want to, but it's math and it's logic.
With that, Joe, where can people find your book? Where can they buy it? Where can they learn more about you and follow you?
Yeah. Appreciate it. It's the EXITpreneur's Playbook. If you just go to Amazon and search EXITpreneur, you'll find it. EXITpreneur.io is the website. We've got more content there. I've got a space called 10-Minute Tuesdays where I'm going to do videos and content updates on a regular basis. EXITpreneur.io, EXITpreneur on Amazon. You can find the paperback, hardcover, or Kindle.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Joe, for a few minutes of your time. This will go live right when your book launches. So thanks for a few minutes. Congratulations on your book. And we're going to make this an Amazon bestseller.
There you go. Appreciate it.